Amanda's mother was bleeding out on her kitchen floor when Amanda kicked the door down. Not dead yet, but close enough that the difference was measured in minutes, in heartbeats, in the speed of Amanda's hands as she dropped to her knees in a pool of blood that looked black under the kitchen lights. Mama. Amanda breathed, her hands already moving, already assessing, already fighting against the reality of torn flesh and too much blood and a wound that screamed professional hit. Mama, stay with me. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and afraid. Baby? That you? It's me, Mama. I'm here. Amanda's voice cracked as she applied pressure to the stab wound in her mother's abdomen, the kind of wound designed to kill slowly, painfully, with maximum suffering. Who did this? Where's Marcus? Where's Shanice? They took them. Her mother's hand gripped Amanda's with surprising strength. Asian men. Lots of them. Said. She coughed, blood flecking her lips. Said you'd know why. Said you'd come. Said this was just the beginning. Amanda's vision went red, then crystal clear. The kind of clarity that comes when rage burns so hot it becomes ice, when grief transforms into purpose, when a woman from Chicago's South Side remembers exactly who she was before nursing school and promises and trying to save the world one patient at a time. Kong's father had made a mistake. He'd threatened her family, and he was about to learn that some mistakes don't get forgiven. They get avenged. Welcome back to True Soul Stories. And if you're just joining us now, you picked the worst possible time to start, because we're about to end this story in blood and revelation and the kind of justice that doesn't come from courtrooms. I need to know where you're watching from right now because this story is about to span 2 continents and answer every question we've been asking since part 1. Drop your city in the comments. Chicago, Seoul, Lagos, Tokyo, London. Let me know you're here because what's about to happen, you're going to want witnesses for. Now let's get back to Amanda, who's about to show Kong's father exactly what happens when you bring a war to a woman who's already survived one. The ambulance arrived in 4 minutes. Amanda rode with her mother, her hands never stopping their work, her mind cataloging injuries and calculating odds and refusing, absolutely refusing, to accept that she'd flown 8,000 miles only to watch her mother die in the back of a Chicago ambulance. She's lost too much blood, the paramedic said quietly, his eyes meeting Amanda's with the kind of practiced sympathy that comes from delivering bad news too many times. Even if we get her to the hospital, then we get her there faster. Amanda's voice was steel-wrapped in ice. And you let me worry about what happens after. You just drive and let me work. The paramedic opened his mouth to argue, saw something in Amanda's eyes that stopped him cold, and nodded. The ambulance accelerated through Chicago's early morning streets, sirens wailing, while Amanda worked with the kind of focused intensity that came from years of training and the desperate knowledge that this wasn't just any patient. This was her mother, the woman who'd raised 3 kids alone in one of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods, who'd worked double shifts at the factory to keep food on the table, who'd never given up on Amanda even when Amanda had been running with gangs and headed nowhere good. The woman who'd cried when Amanda got accepted to nursing school, who'd been so proud when Amanda said she was going to Seoul to work, even though Amanda couldn't tell her the real reason why. She couldn't die. Not like this. Not because Amanda had made enemies 8,000 miles away who were cruel enough to make her family pay for it. They made it to Northwestern Memorial in 7 minutes. The trauma team took over, professional and efficient, and not quite fast enough to hide their skepticism when they saw the wound. Abdominal stab wound. Looks like it nicked the renal artery, the lead surgeon said, his voice clinical, detached in the way doctors learn to be. We'll do what we can, but you need to prepare yourself. This kind of blood loss. No buts. You save her. Amanda grabbed his arm, not caring about protocol or hierarchy or professional boundaries. Blood was still wet on her hands, her mother's blood, and her grip was iron. You save her, or I will haunt you for the rest of your medical career. I will know every mistake you make, every shortcut you take, every single moment you could have tried harder. Clear. The surgeon looked at her blood-soaked hands, her desperate eyes, her absolute conviction. He saw something there that made him straighten, made him nod with more determination. Clear. But you need to tell the police what happened. This was attempted murder. They need to find whoever. I already know who did it, and I'm going to handle it myself. Amanda left her mother in the trauma bay, walked past the nurses trying to get her information, past the police officers who'd arrived asking questions, past the waiting room full of people dealing with their own tragedies. She walked out into Chicago's cold morning air with blood on her hands and murder in her heart. Her phone rang before she'd gone 10 steps. Kong's number. Amanda, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for the past hour. My father stabbed my mother and kidnapped my brother and sister. Amanda's voice was flat, emotionless, the kind of calm that precedes violence. Where is he, Kong? Silence. Then, Amanda, I'm so sorry. I should have anticipated this. Should have known he'd go after you through your family. I should have. Tell me where he is. I don't know exactly, but I'm on a plane right now. G1 and Scar are with me. We left as soon as we heard. We're coming to help. How long? 14 hours. He'll kill them before then. Amanda started walking, her mind already working through possibilities, through the kind of street knowledge she tried to leave behind, but never quite could. I need to find him now. She stopped, something clicking into place. Your father doesn't know Chicago, doesn't know the streets, the players, the way things work here. He needs local help, local muscle. So there's only 3 organizations in Chicago that would work with a Korean Mafia boss on short notice. And I know all of them. Amanda's smile was sharp and cold. Because I used to run with one of them before your sister saved my life and gave me a way out. Kong was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. Amanda, what aren't you telling me? That your sister didn't just find a random, struggling nursing student in Boston. She found a girl running from a gang life that would have killed her within a year. She found someone who knew violence intimately because she'd survived it, caused it, been shaped by it since she was 13 years old. Amanda's voice was quiet now, honest in a way she hadn't been since this whole thing started. Your sister saved me from becoming exactly what your father is. And now I have to use everything she saved me from to stop him. You're going back to that life. I never really left it. I just learned to hide it better. Learned to channel it into something productive. Amanda flagged down a cab, her movements sharp, efficient. Tell G1 I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to be better. But sometimes being better isn't enough. Sometimes you have to become what you hate to protect what you love. Amanda, wait for us. 14 hours isn't that long. We can coordinate, plan properly, hit him with overwhelming force. Is 13 hours and 59 minutes too long? My brother is 16. My sister is 12. Do you know what your father can do to them in 14 hours? Amanda's voice cracked slightly. Do you know what kind of message he can send? I know. God, Amanda, I know. But throwing yourself at him alone. I'm not going alone. Amanda pulled out a roll of cash Kong had given her for emergencies. This qualified. I'm going with people who know how to fight dirty. People who owe me. People who understand that sometimes the only way to deal with monsters is to become one yourself. She ended the call before Kong could argue further and gave the cab driver an address on the south side that made him hesitate, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror with concern. Lady, that's Santos territory. Deep Santos territory. You sure you want to go there? Especially looking like. He gestured at her blood-stained clothes. I'm sure. Amanda pulled out $300 bills and held them where he could see. And I'm sure you want to be paid triple to forget you ever took me there. To forget you ever saw me. To forget this conversation ever happened. The driver looked at the cash, at Amanda's blood-soaked clothes, at her eyes that said she was done playing by rules, done being civilized, done with anything except raw survival. He took the money and drove. The ride took 20 minutes through neighborhoods that got progressively rougher, where the buildings showed their age and their wounds, where people moved with the careful awareness of those who lived in war zones that just happened to have street signs. Amanda watched it all through the window, remembering when these streets had been her whole world, when she'd known every corner, every alley, every place to run, and every place to hide. She'd left at 17, running from a life that was killing her friends one by one, running from the violence and the futility and the way rage was eating her alive from the inside out. Juwon had found her in Boston, broken and angry and trying desperately to be something more than a statistic. Had seen past the anger to the girl underneath who was scared and lost and desperate for someone to believe she could be better. And now Amanda was going back. Full circle. Using everything she'd tried to escape to save the family she'd been protecting by staying away. The Santos hadn't changed much in the 7 years Amanda had been gone. Same colors, red and black. Same corners marked with graffiti that told stories if you knew how to read them. Same desperate hustle in a city that chewed up kids and spit them out as statistics in police reports that nobody really read. But Amanda had changed. She'd learned discipline from nursing school, strategy from Kong's sister, patience from watching people die, and knowing you could have prevented it if you'd been just a little bit faster, a little bit smarter, a little bit more willing to do what was necessary. She walked into Santos territory like she'd never left, her posture shifting unconsciously, her walk changing from professional nurse to street survivor. Her voice dropped half an octave. Her eyes hardened. Every bit of the person she'd built in nursing school evaporated to reveal the street kid underneath. The lookouts saw her coming. She watched them straighten, watched phones come out, watched messages get sent. Within 3 minutes, she had an escort, 4 young guys, barely 20, trying to look hard and dangerous and mostly succeeding. "Diego wants to see you," the lead one said, his voice trying for threatening and landing on curious. "Says to bring you in peaceable-like. Says there's no trouble here." "There will be if he doesn't give me what I need," Amanda said, and pushed past them toward the building that had always been Santos headquarters, a 3-story walk-up that looked abandoned but was anything but. Inside, the building smelled like weed and gunpowder and the particular musk of young men living without anyone telling them to clean up. Music thumped from somewhere upstairs. Voices argued in Spanish and English, the bilingual flow of a neighborhood where code switching was survival. Diego Santos sat in what passed for his office, a room on the 2nd floor with bars on the windows and enough weapons visible to stock a small military unit. He looked older than Amanda remembered. He'd only been 25 when she left, but 7 years of gang leadership had added decades to his face. His eyes, though, his eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating, missing nothing. "Amanda Rodriguez," Diego said, using her real last name, the one she'd left behind when she'd fled to Boston and become Amanda Williams for nursing school applications. "Heard you were dead. Then heard you'd made it out, become a nurse or some shit. Then heard nothing for 7 years. Now you show up in my territory looking like you walked through a slaughterhouse. Want to tell me what's going on?" "I need information, Diego. About some Korean men who showed up in the last 24 hours. Professional, armed, military-grade weapons and training. Looking to cause pain." Diego leaned back in his chair, studying her with the kind of attention he'd always paid to interesting problems. "What's in it for me? You left Santos, Amanda. Went straight, got respectable. Why should I help you now? I don't kill you for working with them." The room went silent. Diego's men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. The temperature dropped about 10 degrees as everyone recalculated threat levels. But Diego laughed, the sound genuine and slightly impressed. "Still got that fire, I see. Good. You'll need it." He pulled out his phone, swiped through some photos, turned it to face her. "These the men." Amanda looked at the photo and felt her heart stop. Kong's father stood in the center, surrounded by at least a dozen of his guards. But that wasn't what made Amanda's blood run cold. It was the 2 figures kneeling in front of him, bound and gagged and terrified. Her brother Marcus, 16 and trying so hard to look brave, his lips split and bleeding, his eyes swelling shut. Her sister Shanice, 12 and crying, her face pressed against Marcus's shoulder, her small hands bound so tightly Amanda could see bruising even in the photo. "Where?" Amanda's voice was barely human, something primal and dangerous underneath the word. "Old meatpacking district. Warehouse by the river, the one we used to use for storage before the cops got too curious. They paid good money for privacy and muscle. Paid extra for me to keep locals away, make sure nobody interfered." Diego's eyes narrowed. "But here's the thing, Amanda. They didn't just pay for location. They paid for an audience. Said they wanted to send a message. Said they wanted someone specific to see what happens when you betray their family. Said they wanted you to watch. They want me to watch my family die." Amanda realized, her voice hollow. "They want you to suffer. Want you to break. Want you to feel every moment of helplessness before they kill you too." Diego stood slowly. "But here's what they don't know. What they couldn't know because they're not from here, because they don't understand how things work in Chicago. What? You're Santos. Once Santos, always Santos. We don't erase people just because they left. We don't forget the ones who ran with us, who bled with us, who were there when things got hard." Diego gestured to his men. "And we sure as hell don't let outside organizations fuck with our people, even the ones who got out. Especially the ones who got out and made something of themselves." Amanda stared at him. "You're saying?" "I'm saying you want an army? You got one. You want every Santos in Chicago ready to move? Consider it done. You want to burn these Korean motherfuckers for coming into our territory and threatening our family." Diego's smile was sharp and dangerous. "Hell, Amanda, I've been looking for a good fight all week." Amanda should have said no. Should have insisted on doing this alone, on keeping the violence contained, on not dragging more people into her war. But her brother and sister were in that warehouse. And she'd learned from Kong's sister that sometimes you accept help, even from unlikely sources. That sometimes survival means building alliances in dark places. Let's go, Amanda said. They moved through Chicago like a storm system, Santos colors flying openly now, weapons no longer concealed, anger and territorial pride mixing into something that made even cops turn away and pretend they hadn't seen. Diego had made calls. Within 30 minutes, he'd assembled over 50 Santos members, from teenagers barely old enough to shave to veterans in their 30s who'd survived multiple gang wars. They knew these streets, knew these warehouses, knew exactly how to hit a target when subtlety wasn't required and overwhelming force was the only message worth sending. The meatpacking warehouse loomed ahead, ugly and functional and perfect for the kind of violence Kong's father specialized in. Amanda could see guards on the roof, posted at corners, patrolling the perimeter with military precision. Her phone buzzed. A video message from an unknown number. She opened it and almost dropped the phone. Kong's father stood in the center of a concrete room, Marcus and Shanice still bound at his feet. But now there was a third figure, and Amanda's world tilted on its axis. G1. Bound. Beaten. Kneeling like the others. Her face was swollen, bruised in a way that said sustained beating, methodical violence designed to hurt without killing. Yet, her clothes were torn. Blood matted her hair. But her eyes were still fierce, still fighting, still refusing to break. "Hello, Amanda," Kong's father said to the camera, his English perfect and cold as winter. "I believe you know my daughter. The one who's been causing me so many problems. The one who thought she could destroy my empire and face no consequences. The one who's been dead for 7 years but apparently refuses to stay buried." He grabbed G1's hair, yanked her head back roughly. She didn't make a sound, didn't give him the satisfaction, just stared at the camera with those fierce eyes. "She tried to save you." Kong's father continued conversationally. "Tried to stop me from coming to Chicago. Tried to." He smiled, the expression more terrifying than any anger could be. "Tried to trade herself for your family's safety. Offered to come with me quietly, to face whatever punishment I deemed fit, if I'd just leave your mother and siblings alone. Isn't that touching? Isn't that the most pathetically noble thing you've ever heard?" "No." Amanda breathed, her hands shaking. "G1, no, why would you?" "So here's my offer," Kong's father continued, his hand still twisted in Ji-won's hair like he was holding a disobedient dog. "You come to this warehouse. Alone. Unarmed. Walk through that door with nothing but the clothes on your back. And I'll let your family go. I'll even let my wayward daughter go, despite everything she's done, despite the years of disobedience and betrayal. But you," his smile widened, "you pay for every problem you've caused. Every moment you've kept my son alive when he should have died. Every second you've interfered with my family's business. Every time you made me look weak by stopping my plans." The video ended. Diego looked at Amanda, his expression unreadable. "That's a trap. You know that's a trap, right? The second you walk in there alone, he kills all of you. Makes it last. Makes it hurt. Obviously, you're going anyway. Obviously, you'll die. Probably." Amanda checked her phone again. Kong's plane was still 9 hours out. He'd said Ji-won was with him, safe on a plane crossing the Pacific. But Kong's father had gotten to her somehow, had pulled her off that plane, or intercepted her before she could board, or it didn't matter how. What mattered was that Ji-won was in that warehouse, beaten and bound, having traded herself for Amanda's family like Amanda should have known she would. Because that's what Ji-won did. That's who she was. The woman who protected people she loved at the cost of everything else. The woman who'd saved Amanda once and was apparently determined to do it again, even if it killed her. "She saved my life once," Amanda said quietly, more to herself than to Diego. "In a Boston dorm room 7 years ago when I was ready to give up on everything. When I was so angry at the world, so convinced I was worthless, so sure I'd never be anything but another statistic. She taught me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about what you do when you're broken. How you put the pieces back together into something stronger than what you were before." "Noble," Diego said. "Still gonna get you killed. Then I die. But my family doesn't. And G1 doesn't." Amanda looked at him, her eyes hard. "I need a distraction. Something big enough to draw their attention, loud enough to pull guards away from the interior, chaotic enough that I can slip inside during the confusion." "How big we talking?" Santos sized big. "Make them think they're under full assault. Make them believe they're about to be overrun. Pull every guard to the perimeter defending against your people while I get to the hostages." Diego's smile was sharp and appreciative. "You always did think big, Amanda. even when you were 15 and barely knew which end of a gun to point. All right, you want a distraction? We'll give them a distraction they'll never forget. We'll make it look like the whole South Side is coming for them. The plan came together fast, built on local knowledge and street tactics, and the kind of controlled chaos that gangs perfected through generations of survival. Santos would hit the warehouse from 3 sides at once, making enough noise to wake the dead, firing enough rounds to make it seem like an army, drawing Kong's father's guards out to defend the perimeter and protect their boss. While Amanda slipped in through the drainage tunnel that Diego's people had used for years to move product without detection. The tunnel that came up in the warehouse basement, unknown to anyone who wasn't Santos, unguarded because Kong's father's people didn't know Chicago well enough to know all its secrets. You'll have maybe 10 minutes, Diego warned as they moved into position. Once they realize the assault outside is just noise, once they figure out it's a distraction, they'll start looking inside for the real threat. 10 minutes to find your people, free them, and get out. 10 minutes is more than enough. And Amanda? Diego caught her arm. If you die in there, I'm telling everyone you went out like a warrior, not like some nurses who got soft. Appreciate it, Amanda said, and meant it. The assault began at exactly 3:17 p.m., time to the second. Santos hit the warehouse from 3 sides at once, dozens of gang members with weapons ranging from handguns to rifles, making enough noise to sound like hundreds. They lit trash fires for visual effect, set off fireworks that sounded like explosions, created the kind of chaos that looked and felt like an all-out war. Kong's father's guards responded exactly as expected, pouring out of the warehouse to meet the threat, forming defensive positions, returning fire with military precision. While Amanda slipped into the drainage tunnel alone, her borrowed weapon in one hand and a flashlight in the other, moving through darkness that smelled like sewage and decay and the particular rot of places meant to be forgotten. The tunnel was tight, cramped, forcing her to crouch as she moved. Water dripped from somewhere. Things scuttled in the darkness that she tried not to think about. Every sound was amplified, every breath loud enough to give her away. But she kept moving, kept counting steps like Diego had taught her, kept her breathing steady and her mind focused. 147 steps. That's what Diego had said. 147 steps, and then a ladder leading up into the warehouse basement. She counted. 145, 146, 147. The ladder was there, exactly where it should be, rusty and old but sturdy enough. Amanda climbed with her weapon holstered, her hands free, moving as quietly as possible. The basement hatch opened with a rusty squeal that sounded like a scream in the enclosed space. Amanda froze, waiting for voices, for footsteps, for any sign she'd been heard. Nothing. The gunfire outside was too loud, too all-consuming. No one was paying attention to the basement. She emerged in a concrete room that smelled like old meat and newer blood. The warehouse basement, storage area, abandoned now except for the ghosts of whatever business had once been conducted here. Amanda moved through it like smoke, using shadows and abandoned equipment for cover, heading toward the stairs that would lead up to the main floor. That's where they'd be. The hostages. The guards. Kong's father. G1. Everything that mattered concentrated in one space. She found the stairs, climbed them, paused at the door, and heard G1's voice, strong despite obvious pain, echoing down from above. "You're a coward," G1 was saying, her English perfect even through what sounded like a split lip. "Threatening children. Threatening a woman who only wanted to help my brother. This isn't strength, father. It's fear. Fear." Kong's father's laugh was cruel, mocking. "I'm not the one kneeling, daughter. I'm not the one beaten and bound. I'm not the one whose noble sacrifice is about to mean nothing. No, you're just the one whose empire is burning, whose crimes are public, whose name will be nothing but a cautionary tale about what happens when power becomes cruelty." G1's voice was steady, certain, unbroken despite everything. "I may die here, but I die knowing I freed Kong, freed my daughter, freed everyone you tried to trap in your version of family. And when historians look back at our family, they'll remember me as the one who said no. You'll just be the monster I had to destroy to save the people I loved." Touching, but ultimately pointless. Kong's father's voice moved closer to G1. "Your brother is too weak to use what you gave him. Your daughter will be raised by my people, shaped into a proper heir. And this woman you sacrificed yourself for." He laughed. "She's probably already dead, killed trying to mount some foolish rescue. You died for nothing, G1. Again. We'll see," G1 said quietly. Amanda kicked the door open. The warehouse main floor was exactly as bad as she'd expected, maybe worse. Kong's father in the center of the space, weapon in hand, his face twisted with satisfaction. Ji-won kneeling about 10 feet from him, bloodied but unbroken, her eyes sharp despite the beating. Marcus and Shanice bound nearby, their eyes wide with terror and hope when they saw Amanda. And 6 guards, all armed, all trained, all pointing weapons at Amanda the second she appeared. There she is, Kong's father said pleasantly, like Amanda had arrived for tea instead of a war. Right on time. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate your gang friends? Did you think I came to Chicago without preparation? I've been in this business for 40 years, girl. I've seen every trick, every strategy, every desperate gambit. Did you really think I came alone? Amanda countered, her weapon steady on Kong's father's head. The windows exploded inward in a shower of glass and chaos. Not from Santos. From something else entirely. Through the broken glass came Kong, moving like death incarnate despite his injuries, his face twisted with rage and determination. Scar was beside him, both armed and furious and absolutely done with this old man's games. Hello, father, Kong said, his weapon trained on the old man's head with the steadiness of someone who'd made peace with what came next. You look surprised. Don't be. You taught me to always have a backup plan, to always anticipate my enemy's moves, to never, ever let personal attachment cloud tactical thinking. The plane, Kong's father started, his face going through confusion to comprehension to rage, was a decoy. We split up over the Pacific. G1 took the commercial flight to make you think you had time. I took a military transport arranged through some of Scar's contacts. Got here 6 hours ago. Kong moved into the room, and Amanda could see it now. The pain he was pushing through, the exhaustion he was ignoring, the pure force of will keeping him upright when his body wanted to collapse. Been waiting in position for hours. Waiting for Amanda's signal. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for you to show me exactly how far you'd go. He gestured, and more of his men came through the broken windows, through doors Amanda hadn't even noticed, surrounding Kong's father's guards with overwhelming force. So here we are, Kong continued, his voice cold as winter. You wanted a confrontation? You've got one. You wanted to destroy my sister? She's right there, beaten but alive. You wanted to break Amanda? She just walked through your defenses like they were nothing. You wanted to send a message. Kong's smile was sharp and terrible. Message received. Now here's mine. How touching. The dying son, the traitor daughter, the black bitch who started all of this. Kong's father's face had gone red with rage, with the humiliation of being outmaneuvered. But you're still outgunned. Still. G1 moved. Even bound, even injured, she moved with the kind of speed that said years of training, years of preparation for exactly this moment, years of knowing her father well enough to anticipate his patterns. Her shoulder hit Kong's father's knees, taking him down, creating chaos, creating the split-second opening they needed. Amanda fired. So did Kong. So did Scar. The warehouse erupted in violence. Kong's father's guards went down in a symphony of gunfire and desperation, outmaneuvered and outgunned, and caught completely off balance. But Kong's father still had his weapon, still had his rage. And as he fell, as G1 tried to roll away, he did the thing Amanda should have anticipated. He aimed at the one target he knew would destroy them all. He aimed at Marcus and Shanice. If I die, he snarled, blood running from his mouth where he'd bitten his tongue in the fall, your family dies with me. If I lose everything, everyone loses everything. Time slowed. Amanda saw it happening. Saw Kong's father's finger tightening on the trigger, the micro-movements that preceded the shot. Saw her siblings' faces, so young, so terrified, so completely unprepared to die. Saw Marcus trying to shield Shanice with his body, trying to be brave, trying to protect his little sister one final time. Saw G1, still bound, still injured, launching herself between them and the gun. Making the choice she'd made 7 years ago when she'd saved Amanda in Boston. The choice she'd made every day since, to sacrifice everything for people she loved. No. The scream tore from Amanda's throat, primal and desperate. But G1 was already moving, already committed, already throwing her body in front of 2 children she'd never met, protecting them because they were Amanda's family, and that was enough. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space, a sound that seemed to stop time, that made everything else disappear. G1's body jerked once, then crumpled, falling between Marcus and Shanice like a shield made flesh, like a final act of defiance against a man who'd never understood what it meant to love someone more than yourself. Kong's weapon barked twice more in rapid succession. Kong's father dropped, 2 neat holes in his chest, dead before he hit the ground, his reign of cruelty ending in a Chicago warehouse surrounded by the wreckage of his final mistake. But none of that mattered because G1 was bleeding out on the concrete floor, and Amanda was already running, already dropping to her knees beside the woman who'd saved her life, who'd taught her strength, who'd given her a reason to believe she could be more than what the world expected. No, no, no. Amanda's hands were moving with desperate speed, applying pressure, assessing damage, seeing what her training told her couldn't be fixed. The bullet had entered just below Ji-won's left shoulder blade, angled down, through the lung, possibly nicking the heart. Too much damage. Too much blood. Ji-won, stay with me. Stay with me, you hear? Ji-won's eyes opened, focused on Amanda's face with effort. Had to, she whispered, blood bubbling at her lips. They're children. Innocent. The future. Everything we're fighting for. You're not dying, Amanda said fiercely, her hands working despite the blood, despite the reality of a wound too close to the heart, despite everything her training told her about exit wounds and internal damage and time running out. I didn't come back to Seoul, didn't keep your brother alive, didn't fight this hard just to lose you now. You don't get to sacrifice yourself. You don't get to leave your daughter without a mother. You don't get to. Amanda. Ji-won's hand found hers, gripped with weakening strength. You know better. You're a nurse. You can see. I don't care what I can see. I care about what I can do. But even as Amanda said it, she knew. Knew in the way every medical professional knows when they're fighting a losing battle. Knew from the amount of blood, the location of the wound, the way Ji-won's breathing was becoming more labored with each second. Kong was there now, on his knees beside his sister, his face twisted with grief and rage and helplessness. Tears were streaming down his face, all his dangerous criminal persona stripped away to reveal just a brother who'd lost the only person who'd ever truly understood him. Ji-won, don't you dare leave me again. I just got you back. Your daughter just got you back. We're supposed to. His voice broke completely. We're supposed to have time. To heal. To be a family. You're supposed to raise your daughter and watch me get better and see that your sacrifice meant something. Little brother. Ji-won's smile was soft despite the pain, despite the blood. You're free now. He can't hurt you anymore. Can't hurt anyone. Can't twist what our family should be into something monstrous. She coughed, more blood on her lips. My daughter is safe, Kong assured her, his voice breaking on every word. Waiting in Seoul with Yun and people who love her. Who'll raise her right. Who'll. He couldn't continue, grief choking off his words. Tell her. Ji-won's breath was getting shallower, each one a struggle. Tell her I'm sorry. For not being there. For choosing this fight instead of being her mother. Tell her I loved her more than anything. More than freedom. More than revenge. More than my own life. Stop, Amanda commanded, her voice cracking, her hands still working even though she knew it was futile. Stop talking like you're dying because you're not. You can't. I won't let you. Amanda. Ji-won's eyes held hers, and in them Amanda saw acceptance, peace, the kind of calm that comes when someone knows they've done everything they could. Thank you. For coming back. For keeping your promise. For being exactly who I knew you'd be. For taking care of Kong when I couldn't. For, she coughed again, struggling. For being my sister. My real sister. The one I chose. I'm nothing without what you taught me. You were always everything. I just helped you see it. Ji-won's hand tightened on Amanda's with the last of her strength. Finish nursing school. Save lives. Be the healer I knew you could be. Build that clinic you always talked about. Help people the way I helped you. Make it mean something. Make my sacrifice. Her breathing was failing, her voice getting weaker. Make it count. Promise me. I promise, Amanda whispered through her tears. But you need to stay and help me. You need to see it. You need to. Ji-won's eyes were closing. Tired, she murmured. So tired of running. Of fighting. Of being afraid. Of, her voice trailed off to almost nothing. Of not being able to hold my daughter. Tell her her mother was brave. That I loved her. That every day I was away, I was thinking of her. Fighting for her. Wanting to come home to her. Then come home. Kong said desperately, his hand finding hers. Stay alive and come home. Your daughter needs you. I need you. We all. But Ji-won's hand went slack in Amanda's. Her breathing stopped. The fierce light in her eyes, the spirit that had defied a criminal empire, and fought for freedom and given everything for the people she loved, flickered out like a candle in the wind. And the woman who'd saved Amanda's life, who'd taught Kong mercy, who'd sacrificed everything for a better future, was gone. Amanda screamed. A sound of pure grief and rage and helplessness that echoed through the warehouse and probably beyond. A sound that came from somewhere so deep it felt like her soul was tearing apart. Kong held his sister's body and wept like a child, all his dangerous criminal persona, all his tactical thinking, all his careful control shattered by grief. He rocked her gently, like she was sleeping, like she might wake up if he just held on tight enough. Scar stood guard, his face wet with tears, watching the door while his boss grieved, protecting them one final time even though the threat was gone. And Marcus and Shanice, freed from their bonds by Scar's knife, held each other and cried for a woman they'd barely known but who'd died saving them, who'd thrown her body in front of bullets meant for them without hesitation. Diego Santos appeared in the doorway, his people behind him, the battle outside over. He looked at G1's body, at Amanda's grief, at Kong's devastation, and shook his head slowly. She died a warrior, he said quietly, with the respect due to someone who'd faced death protecting innocence. Protecting children. Protecting the future. That's the best death any of us can hope for in this life. She shouldn't have had to hope for any death, Amanda said, her voice broken, her hands still on G1's body like she could somehow pull her back. She should have lived. Should have raised her daughter. Should have seen Kong recover. Should have. She couldn't finish, grief stealing her words. Kong carefully, gently, closed his sister's eyes, smoothed her hair, made her look almost peaceful despite the violence of her end. Despite the blood and the warehouse and the terrible unfairness of dying just when freedom had seemed possible. She saved us all, he said finally, his voice hollow. Father's dead. His empire's destroyed. The evidence G1 compiled is public. The family's leadership is either dead or in custody. The whole structure, his voice cracked. The whole structure she spent 7 years dismantling is finished. And it cost her everything. They sat there for a long time. In that warehouse, surrounded by the dead and the grieving. Outside, sirens wailed, getting closer, drawn by the gunfire and chaos. Police, ambulances, the machinery of law enforcement that would turn this into reports and investigations, and ultimately justice. We need to move, Scar said gently after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Boss, the police. Let them come, Kong said, his hand still holding his sister's. I'm done running. Done hiding. I want to tell them everything. Every crime. Every murder. Everything my family did. G1 gathered the evidence. I'll make sure it leads to convictions. I'll make sure her death. He stopped, swallowed hard. I'll make sure her death meant something. That the empire she died to destroy stays destroyed. Amanda helped Marcus and Shanice to their feet, checked them for injuries, found them physically whole, if emotionally shattered. Mama's at Northwestern Memorial, she told them. Her voice steadier now though her hands were still shaking. She's in surgery, but she's going to make it. We're all, her voice caught. We're all going to make it. Because of her. She looked at G1's body. Because she wouldn't let us do anything else. The police arrived in a flood of lights and guns and questions that would take days to answer fully. But Kong had evidence. G1's evidence. Carefully compiled and stored and ready to bring down an empire. And Amanda had her nursing credentials, her clean record, her status as a victim's family member that gave her protection. Diego and his Santos melted away before the police could properly arrive, ghost-like, back into the neighborhoods where they belonged. But not before Diego clasped Amanda's shoulder. She died protecting yours, he said quietly. That makes her Santos too, in spirit. We honor that. You need anything at all, you call. Family takes care of family. Amanda nodded, unable to speak, and watched him disappear into Chicago's streets. The next hours were a blur of statements and questions, and the slow machinery of justice grinding into motion. Kong's father's body was removed. Ji-won's was treated with the dignity due to someone who died a hero, not a criminal. The evidence Kong provided, Ji-won's evidence, started making its way through the system. Amanda went to the hospital to check on her mother, found her out of surgery and stable, her prognosis good. Sat with Marcus and Shanice while they processed trauma, while therapists asked gentle questions and made plans for follow-up care. And through it all, Amanda felt Ji-won's absence like a physical wound, a hole in the world that couldn't be filled. 3 days later, Kong arranged a private funeral. Not in Korea, where Ji-won's body would have been subject to family politics and traditional obligations she'd spent her life rejecting. But in Chicago, the city where she died protecting children she'd never met, saving a friend she'd made 7 years ago in a Boston dorm room. The service was small. Amanda and her family, Kong and Scar, Yun, who'd flown from Seoul with Ji-won's daughter, Diego and a few Santos, paying respects in their own way. A handful of others, people Ji-won had helped, had saved, had touched during her 7 years of careful rebellion against a criminal empire. Ji-won's daughter stood at the front, 9 years old and heartbroken, trying to understand why her mother had left again, why this time was permanent, why heroes didn't always get happy endings. Amanda knelt beside her. "Your mother was the bravest person I ever knew," she said softly. "She saved my life once. Then she saved my family. She spent 7 years fighting to make the world better, to destroy something evil, to protect people she loved." Amanda took the girl's hand. "She loved you more than anything. Everything she did hoping you'd have a better world to grow up in. A world without the cruelty she'd faced." "Did it work?" the girl asked, her voice small. "Did she make the world better?" Amanda thought about Kong's father dead, about the criminal empire dismantled, about the evidence bringing down dozens of criminals, about freedom bought with blood and sacrifice. "Yes," Amanda said. "It worked. Because of her, because of what she gave, the world is a little bit better. And every day, everyone she saved, and everyone they help in turn makes it better still." "That's what Uncle Kong said too." The girl looked at Ji-won's casket. "I just wish she was here to see it." "She is," Amanda assured her. "In every person she saved who goes on to save others. In every act of courage that her courage inspired. In you, carrying her spirit forward." She hugged the girl. "Your mother lives on. Not just in memories, but in actions, in choices, in everyone who decides to be brave because she showed them how." The funeral ended. Ji-won was laid to rest in a peaceful cemetery on Chicago's north side, far from the violence that had defined too much of her life. But here's what happened next. In the days and weeks and months that followed, Kong turned himself in, provided testimony against every remaining member of his family's organization, helped prosecutors build cases that would put criminals away for lifetimes. He was granted immunity for his cooperation and for the evidence proving he'd been trying to dismantle his father's empire from the inside. His cardiac condition was managed by specialists, by Amanda's fierce attention, by the kind of stubborn refusal to die that apparently ran in his family. Amanda's mother survived her surgery, spent 2 weeks in ICU fighting through complications, and emerged with a story about the crazy daughter who'd flown from Seoul to save her family and the Korean woman who'd died protecting her children. She recovered slowly, but she recovered. Marcus and Shanice went through therapy, processing trauma that would take years to fully heal. But they were alive. They were together. And they had a sister who'd moved heaven and earth to save them. Amanda returned to Seoul 6 weeks later, her family safe, her heart scarred but intact, her purpose clearer than ever. She finished nursing school with honors, her thesis on trauma care dedicated to Ji-won's memory, got her certification, and opened a small clinic in one of Seoul's neighborhoods that needed medical care more than they needed judgment. Kong funded it, of course. Funded a lot of things, actually, as he worked to turn his family's blood money into something that might honor his sister's memory. Orphanages, schools, clinics, everything Ji-won had believed in, made real with money that had once been used for evil. They weren't together, not romantically. The bond between them was deeper than romance, stranger than friendship. They were survivors, bound by the woman they'd both loved and lost, bound by shared trauma and shared purpose and the determination to make her sacrifice mean something. Kong took custody of Ji-won's daughter, raised her with the help of nannies and teachers and Amanda, who visited every week, who told stories about the girl's mother, keeping Ji-won's memory alive and fierce and present. Yun eventually joined them, her role in Ji-won's survival and Kong's protection finally acknowledged. Her 7 years of careful deception, of playing multiple sides, of protecting people at terrible personal cost, earned her a place in the strange family they'd built from wreckage. She and Kong developed something over time. Not quite romance, not quite partnership, but a mutual understanding built on shared trauma and shared goals. And sometimes, late at night, Amanda would sit in her clinic and remember a Boston dorm room 7 years ago, when a Korean woman with fierce eyes had told a broken Chicago girl that she could be more than her circumstances. Would remember Ji-won teaching her anatomy with the kind of passion that made textbooks come alive, that made healing seem like magic instead of memorization. Would remember the promise she'd made and kept, even when it cost more than she'd imagined, even when the price was paid in blood and grief, and watching the best person she'd ever known die in a Chicago warehouse. Would remember the final moment, Ji-won's eyes holding hers, thanking her for being exactly who she was meant to be, for coming back, for keeping the promise. And Amanda would whisper to the empty room, to the ghost she carried in her heart, I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to be worthy of what you gave me, still making it mean something. Because that's what you do when someone saves your life. You live it. You live it with the kind of fierce purpose that honors their sacrifice. You become the person they believed you could be, even when you couldn't see it yourself. You survive, and you make it mean something. You make it count. 3 years later, Amanda stood in her clinic, treating a young girl with a broken arm and too much fear in her eyes. She recognized the signs immediately: gang life, domestic violence, the kind of circumstances that break people young, that steal futures before they've even begun. What's your name? Amanda asked gently, her hands working to set the arm with practiced efficiency. Jasmine. That's beautiful. Like the flower. Amanda smiled. You know, I used to be a lot like you, Jasmine. Scared, angry, caught in a life that seemed impossible to escape, where every day was just survival and hope seemed like something that happened to other people. How'd you get out? Amanda paused in her work, met the girl's eyes. Someone saw me, really saw me, past the anger and the fear to the person underneath, and taught me that I was worth saving, that I could be more than my circumstances, more than what the world expected from a girl like me. Who? Her name was Ji-won. She was fierce and brilliant and believed in people when they couldn't believe in themselves. Amanda finished the cast, decorated it with stars and lightning bolts at the girl's request, making something beautiful from something broken. She saved my life. And then she saved my family. And then she died making sure people like you and me get to have futures. She sounds like a hero. She was, is, always will be. Amanda pulled out a card, her clinic's information on it. Now I'm going to see you. Really see you. And I'm going to help you, if you'll let me. Medical care whenever you need it. Someone to talk to. Resources to get out if that's what you want. No judgment. No conditions. Just help. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why would you do that? Because someone once helped me. And the best way to honor that is to keep helping others. To pass on what was given to me. Amanda squeezed the girl's hand gently. You're worth saving, Jasmine. You're worth more than whatever circumstances put that fear in your eyes. And I'm going to keep telling you that until you believe it yourself. What if I never believe it? Then I'll keep saying it anyway. For as long as it takes. Amanda smiled. That's what Ji-won did for me. Said it every day for months until it finally sank in. Until I finally saw myself the way she saw me. The girl left with Amanda's card clutched in her hand and something new in her eyes. Hope, maybe. Or just the possibility of hope, which was sometimes enough to start with. Kong appeared in the doorway then, holding his niece's hand. She was 12 now, beautiful and bright, and so much like her mother it hurt in the best possible way. And Amanda. The girl ran forward, hugged Amanda tight. Uncle Kong says you have a new story about Mom. Will you tell me? Please. Of course, sweetheart. Amanda knelt down, met those eyes that were Ji-won's eyes, and felt her heart break and heal simultaneously, the way it always did when she looked at this child who was her best friend's legacy. Today I'll tell you about the time your mom saved my life. Not the last time in Chicago. The first time. In a little dorm room in Boston where she taught me that being strong doesn't mean never being scared. It means being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. The girls settled in to listen, hungry for stories about the mother she barely remembered, hungry for connection to the woman who'd loved her enough to die protecting strangers. Kong watched them, his face peaceful in a way it never was before Ji-won's death, his cardiac condition stable, his life rebuilt into something his sister would have been proud of. He'd turned down leadership of what remained of his family's organization, instead using his knowledge to help prosecutors dismantle other criminal empires, to prevent other families from being destroyed the way his had been. He caught Amanda's eye and nodded, a gesture of thanks and solidarity and shared understanding. They'd both lost her. They were both determined to make sure her death meant something. And somewhere, somehow, Amanda liked to think Ji-won was watching, was smiling that fierce smile, was proud of what they'd built from the wreckage of her sacrifice. Because that's what heroes do. They give everything, and trust the people they save to make it mean something. Ji-won had given everything. And Amanda, Kong, Yun, and a little girl who'd never really know her mother were making damn sure it meant everything. They were living the lives Ji-won had died to protect. They were building the future she'd sacrificed everything for. They were keeping the promise. And every day, in small ways and large, they were proving that her death hadn't been in vain. That courage echoes. That sacrifice ripples outward. That one person's choice to be better, to fight harder, to protect what matters, can change everything. Ji-won had changed everything. And her legacy lived on, fierce and bright and unbreakable, in everyone she touched. If you made it to the end of this journey, I need you to know something. This story, these 3 parts, they're about more than just mafia drama and international intrigue. They're about the bonds we choose, the promises we keep, and the way one person's courage can ripple out to save dozens of lives across years and continents. Ji-won died. And I know some of you are crying right now, angry that we lost her, wishing she could have survived to see her daughter grow up, to see Kong heal, to see the world she'd fought so hard to create. But here's the truth. She did survive. In every person she saved. In every lesson she taught. In Amanda's clinic and Kong's redemption and that little girl's fierce spirit. Heroes don't always get to live happily ever after. Sometimes their happy ending is knowing they gave everything for something that mattered. Sometimes their reward is changing the world just enough that their death makes all the difference. Now, before you go, I need 3 things from you. First, smash that like button if this story moved you, made you feel something, made you believe in the kind of sacrifice that changes everything. Do it for Ji-won. Do it for every person who's ever given everything to protect someone they loved. Second, comment below and tell me what you thought. Did Ji-won's death honor her character? Did the ending feel right? What was your favorite moment across all 3 parts? Did you see the twists coming? I read every single comment, and I want to know how this story hit you. Third, and this is the big one, subscribe. Because True Soul Stories isn't ending here. We have more stories coming. Stories about the people Ji-won saved who went on to save others. Stories about the consequences of destroying a criminal empire. Stories about Amanda's clinic and the lives it touches. Stories about Kong's niece growing up and discovering who her mother really was. Stories about the cost of justice and the price of redemption. This chapter is closed. But the story? The story keeps going. Just like Ji-won would have wanted. This is True Soul Stories, where every ending is just another beginning. Where we never forget that the best way to honor someone's sacrifice is to live the life they gave you with purpose, with passion, and with the fierce love they showed you. See you in the next series. If you're brave enough to follow where the story leads. Rest in power, Ji-won. Your story is over. But your legacy is just beginning. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being here for this journey. Until next time, this is True Soul Stories, reminding you that heroes live forever, not in their own lives, but in everyone they save.